How far would you go to save the people you love, if it meant facing the man who once shattered your soul? Dr. Laura Carter thought her past was buried for good, until desperation led her to the gleaming tower of Lorenzo Richmond, the ruthless billionaire with the cold gray eyes who once held her heart in his hands and crushed it. Now, with her father dying and her family business on the brink, Lorenzo offers a lifeline. But the price he demands isn't just steep, it's personal. And accepting his deal could cost Laura far more than she ever imagined, including what's left of her heart. If powerful stories of love, loss, and redemption move you, hit that like button. It helps more people discover love stories worth telling. Drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. We love connecting with you. And be sure to subscribe and ring that bell, because every story I share is chosen to make you feel something real. Dr. Laura Carter stood before the towering glass building of Richmond Enterprises, her heart hammering against her ribs. The crisp Chicago wind whipped through her auburn hair as she clutched her medical bag. 5 years had passed since she'd walked away from this world from him. Now desperation brought her back. Her family's construction company, Carter and Associates, was drowning in debt. Her father lay dying of cancer, and 20 families depended on her to save their jobs. Only one man had the power to help her now: Lorenzo Richmond, the billionaire CEO who once held her heart in his hands. The elevator climbed 30 floors in silence. Each second felt like a lifetime. Lorenzo sat behind his mahogany desk, sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. His jet-black hair was perfectly styled, his steel-gray eyes colder than winter. The tailored black suit he wore looked like armor, protection from the world, from her. "Laura Carter," he said without looking up from his computer. "I never thought you'd crawl back here." Laura's nails dug into her palms. "I'm not here for me, Lorenzo. My father is dying. The company is failing. You're the only one who can save it." Lorenzo leaned back, his gaze cutting through her like a blade. "And why would I help you, after what you did to me?" The words hit her chest like bullets. She wanted to scream the truth, that his mother had destroyed them, threatened to ruin her family if she didn't disappear. But silence was her only weapon now. "Because you can," she whispered. "Carter and Associates just needs restructuring and a loan. It's a solid investment." Lorenzo laughed, a cold, bitter sound. "You're still clever, Laura. But words aren't enough. If I save your company, I want something in return." Laura's stomach dropped. "What?" Lorenzo stood and walked toward her, his presence overwhelming. "1 year. You'll be my wife, legally. And you'll give me a child." The room spun. Laura stepped backward, her back hitting the wall. "You can't be serious." "Dead serious," Lorenzo said, his voice like ice. "The board questions my stability after last year's scandal. A wife and heir will secure my position. You need money. I need a child. It's business." Laura's medical training kicked in. Analyze, assess, survive. "If I agree, I want terms. After 1 year, I walk away with full custody if I choose. And you guarantee a complete restructuring of Carter and Associates." Lorenzo smiled, sharp and dangerous, still playing hardball. "Fine. My lawyer will draft the contract. But once you sign, there's no escape." Laura stared into his eyes, searching for the boy who once loved her under the stars. But that boy was gone, replaced by this cold stranger. "Draw up the contract," she said. "I'll sign it." The contract was 20 pages of legal hell. Laura sat in the sterile conference room, her hands shaking as she read each clause. She would live with Lorenzo, bear his child, and pretend to be his perfect wife. All to save her family. Having second thoughts? Lorenzo asked from across the table. Laura's chest burned with rage and desperation. "You don't know what you're asking." "I know exactly what I'm asking," Lorenzo replied. You left me without a word 5 years ago. Disappeared after I proposed. Now you want my help? This is the price. The memory crashed over her like a tidal wave. That night 5 years ago when his mother, Victoria Richmond, had cornered her in her apartment. "Leave my son," Victoria had said, her voice dripping with venom, "or I'll destroy your father's company and make sure you never practice medicine again." Laura had written Lorenzo a letter, explaining everything, begging for forgiveness. She'd left it in his mailbox before fleeing the city. But Victoria had stolen it, burned it, and let Lorenzo believe Laura had abandoned him for someone else. Now, sitting across from the man she'd once loved, Laura felt the weight of that lie crushing her chest. "You think I'm here for money," Laura said quietly, "but you don't know the truth." "The truth?" Lorenzo's laugh was bitter. "The truth is you're a coward who runs when things get difficult." Laura signed the contract with trembling fingers. Each letter of her name felt like a nail in her coffin. "Welcome to hell, Laura," Lorenzo said as he took the papers. "You belong to me now." Lorenzo's penthouse overlooked Lake Michigan, its glass walls offering a stunning view of the city lights. But Laura felt like a prisoner in a golden cage. She'd moved in that evening, her medical bag and a single suitcase her only possessions. Lorenzo had barely spoken to her, giving her a room at the end of the hall and telling her to stay out of his way. But as the weeks passed, the cracks in his armor began to show. Late one night, Laura found him in his study, staring at an old photograph. It was her, laughing in their college apartment, her hair messy from sleep, wearing his oversized t-shirt. "Why did you keep it?" she asked softly. Lorenzo quickly put the photo away. "To remind myself never to trust anyone again." The pain in his voice made her chest ache. She wanted to tell him everything, about his mother's threats, about the letter he never received. But Victoria Richmond still held power, and Laura couldn't risk her father's life. That night, they shared a bottle of wine. The alcohol loosened their tongues, brought back memories of who they used to be. And when Lorenzo reached for her, Laura didn't pull away. They made love on the couch, desperate, angry, heartbroken. For one night, they weren't enemies. They were two people drowning in the wreckage of their past. But morning brought reality crashing back. Lorenzo left a note on the table. "Don't confuse this. It's just part of the contract." Laura cried until her tears ran dry. She was a doctor, trained to heal others, but she couldn't heal the wound in her own heart. 2 months later, Laura stared at the pregnancy test in her hands. 2 pink lines stared back at her, proof that new life was growing inside her. She should have felt joy. Instead, she felt trapped. This baby was Lorenzo's heir, the price of saving her family. But as she placed her hand on her still flat stomach, Laura knew she would protect this child with her life. Lorenzo hired a private doctor, arranged for security, demanded she move to his estate outside the city. Every move was calculated, controlled. "This isn't about you," he said when she protested. "It's about my child. Our child," Laura corrected, her voice fierce. "I'm not your property, Lorenzo. I'm a doctor. I know how to take care of myself." But Lorenzo wouldn't budge. The pregnancy brought out his protective instincts and his need for control. Laura found herself surrounded by guards, doctors, nutritionists. She couldn't breathe without his permission. One evening, she found him in the library, holding an old notebook, her medical notes from college. His fingers traced her handwriting with something that looked like tenderness. "I kept this too," he admitted, "to remind myself of who you used to be." "I'm still that person," Laura whispered. "If you just listen." But Lorenzo turned away, his walls slamming back into place. Don't make this harder than it has to be." Dr. Sarah Mitchell, Laura's closest friend and colleague, visited her at the estate. They sat in the garden, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and crimson. "You look miserable," Sarah said bluntly. "This isn't love, Laura. It's a prison." Laura's composure cracked. "I had no choice, Sarah. 5 years ago, his mother threatened to destroy everything if I didn't leave him. She made me disappear. I wrote him a letter explaining everything, but he never got it." Sarah's eyes widened. "You need to tell him the truth." "I can't," Laura said, her hand moving to her growing belly. "Victoria still has power. If she finds out I told him, she'll hurt my father. I can't risk it." What Laura didn't know was that Lorenzo stood just outside the garden door, his face pale with shock. He'd come to check on her, but her words hit him like lightning. "She threatened to destroy everything if I didn't leave him. I wrote him a letter explaining everything, but he never got it." The world tilted on its axis. Lorenzo gripped the doorframe, his mind racing. Had his mother really destroyed their love? Had Laura been telling the truth all along? That night, Lorenzo confronted Victoria at her mansion. The elegant woman sat in her living room, sipping wine as if she hadn't destroyed 2 lives. "What did you do to Laura 5 years ago?" Lorenzo demanded. Victoria's smile was cold. "I protected you from a gold digger. She left because she didn't want to be tied down." "You're lying," Lorenzo growled. "Tell me the truth." But Victoria held firm, her denial smooth as silk. Lorenzo left her house with more questions than answers, but Laura's pain-filled voice echoed in his mind. For the first time in 5 years, doubt crept into his heart. The blizzard hit Detroit like a hammer. Laura was rushed to Mercy General Hospital, her labor starting 3 weeks early. The pain was unlike anything she'd ever experienced, and she was a surgeon who'd seen everything. Dr. Sarah Mitchell held her hand as contractions racked her body. "You're almost there, Laura. Just breathe." Miles away, Lorenzo sat in a board meeting when his phone buzzed. Sarah's message made his blood run cold. "Laura's in labor. Mercy General, come now." He left the meeting without a word, racing through the snow-covered streets. Nothing mattered except getting to Laura and their child. In the delivery room, Laura screamed as she pushed. With one final, agonizing effort, their daughter entered the world, tiny, perfect, and crying. "It's a girl," Sarah announced, tears streaming down her face. But something was wrong. Laura's body went limp as blood soaked the sheets. Postpartum hemorrhage. Every mother's nightmare. "We're losing her," Sarah shouted, her voice filled with terror. "Start a transfusion. Now." Laura's vision blurred as darkness closed in. With her last conscious breath, she whispered, "Lily. Her name is Lily." Lorenzo burst through the doors as the medical team fought to save Laura's life. He saw his daughter, so small, so beautiful, being rushed to the NICU. Then he saw Laura, pale as death, machines beeping frantically around her. He fell to his knees beside her bed, taking her cold hand in his. "Don't leave me," he whispered. "Not again. Please." For the first time in 5 years, Lorenzo's walls crumbled completely. He didn't care about the contract, the company, or his pride. He only cared about the woman who'd given him everything and asked for nothing in return. Dawn broke as the crisis passed. Laura was stable, their daughter safe. Lorenzo had spent the night whispering apologies to Laura's unconscious form, promising to be better, to love her the way she deserved. When Laura finally woke up, she found Lorenzo asleep in the chair beside her bed, his hand still holding hers. 2 weeks later, Laura made her decision. She couldn't stay with Lorenzo. Not when every look reminded her of the contract that bound them. Not when his love felt conditional on her compliance. With Sarah's help, Laura and baby Lily disappeared in the middle of the night. They flew to Seattle, where Laura planned to start over. She left Lorenzo a simple note. "The contract is fulfilled. Don't look for us." Seattle welcomed them with rain and fresh possibilities. Laura opened a small art studio, using painting to heal the wounds that surgery couldn't reach. Under the name EC, she began selling her work. Storms and sunsets, hope and heartbreak captured in brushstrokes. Meanwhile, Lorenzo was going insane. He hired every private investigator in the country, called in every favor, but Laura had vanished like smoke. His mother's continued denials about the past only fueled his desperation. Then, 6 months later, a breakthrough. His investigator found Margaret Thompson, Victoria's former assistant, living quietly in Phoenix. Under pressure, Margaret confessed everything. "Mrs. Richmond made me threaten the Carter family," she sobbed. "And there was a letter Laura wrote explaining everything. Mrs. Richmond made me burn it." Lorenzo felt his world collapse. Laura had been telling the truth. His mother had destroyed their love, and he'd spent 5 years hating the wrong person. The art gallery in Seattle was small but warm, filled with paintings that spoke of pain and redemption. Lorenzo stood in the doorway, his heart pounding as he saw Laura across the room. She was holding Lily, now 8 months old, with Lorenzo's gray eyes and Laura's stubborn chin. She looked up and froze when she saw him. "You shouldn't be here," Laura said, her voice shaking. Lorenzo stepped forward, his eyes drinking in the sight of his daughter. "I know the truth now. About my mother, about the letter. Laura, I'm so sorry." Laura's resolve wavered, but the pain was still too fresh. "It's too late, Lorenzo. I won't be controlled again." Lorenzo dropped to his knees in the middle of the gallery, not caring who saw. "I'm not here because of any contract. I'm here because I love you. Because I never stopped loving you, even when I thought I hated you." His words hit her like a physical blow. "How do I know you won't hurt me again?" "Because I walked away from everything to find you," Lorenzo said simply. "The company, the board, all of it. None of it matters without you and Lily." Laura studied his face, searching for lies. But all she saw was raw honesty and desperate love. "Prove it," she whispered. "Stay in Seattle. Live like a normal person. Show me you've changed." Lorenzo nodded without hesitation. For as long as it takes. Lorenzo rented a modest apartment near Laura's studio. He learned to change diapers, to sing lullabies, to be a father instead of a CEO. Laura watched him stumble through parenthood with a mixture of amusement and growing affection. He started a medical foundation, asking for Laura's expertise in pediatric care. But this time, he listened to her input, respected her knowledge, treated her as an equal partner. Slowly, carefully, they began to rebuild what had been broken. Lorenzo proved his love not with grand gestures, but with quiet consistency. Late-night feedings when Laura was exhausted, flowers left on her studio doorstep, patient conversations about their shattered past. One evening, as they sat watching Lily play on the floor, Laura finally spoke the words that had been locked in her heart for months. "I forgive you," she said quietly. "But if you ever try to control me again." "I won't," Lorenzo interrupted, pulling her close. "I swear on our daughter's life I won't." They kissed then. Not the desperate coupling of their broken past, but something new. Something built on truth and trust, and the kind of love that survives the worst storms. The beach house in Oregon was perfect. Not too grand, not too humble. Just right for a family learning to love again. Laura returned to medicine part-time at the local hospital, while Lorenzo managed his foundation remotely. Lily took her first steps on the sand, her laughter carried away by the ocean breeze. Laura and Lorenzo watched from the porch, his arm around her waist, her head on his shoulder. "Do you ever regret it?" Laura asked. "Giving up the corporate life?" Lorenzo kissed the top of her head. "Never. You and Lily are worth more than all the money in the world." They married at sunset, with only Sarah as witness and Lily as flower girl. No contracts, no conditions, just love, pure and simple. Victoria Richmond made one last attempt to interfere, demanding to see her granddaughter. But Laura stood firm, protecting her family with the fierce determination of a mother bear. "You'll see Lily when you earn it," Laura told the older woman. "Prove you've changed, and maybe we'll talk." As the years passed, they built something beautiful from the ashes of their broken past. Laura's medical practice flourished, Lorenzo's foundation helped thousands of children, and Lily grew into a bright, happy child who knew she was loved beyond measure. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Laura found Lorenzo in his study, looking at that old photograph of her from college. But this time, he wasn't hiding it. "I kept this," he said, "to remind myself of what I almost lost, and what I'll never lose again." Laura smiled, placing her hand over his heart. "We made it through the storm." "We did," Lorenzo agreed, pulling her close. "And we're stronger for it." Outside, Lily's laughter echoed from the garden where she played with the neighbors' children. Inside, Laura and Lorenzo held each other tight, knowing that some love stories are worth fighting for, even when the odds seem impossible. Their love had been tested by lies, broken by betrayal, and nearly destroyed by pride. But in the end, truth had won. Trust had been rebuilt, and two hearts that had been shattered had found their way back to each other. Sometimes the greatest love stories aren't about perfect beginnings. They're about second chances, hard-won forgiveness, and the courage to choose love even when it seems safer to choose hate. Laura and Lorenzo had learned that lesson the hard way. But they'd learned it together, and that made all the difference. If you believe in second chances and the power of true love to overcome any obstacle, you know that some stories are worth the wait. Some hearts are worth the fight, and some love is strong enough to survive even the darkest storms.